another episode of Brew Bandits. We're here at the Stowe Street Brewery in Waterbury, Vermont. Good to see you, Mitch. Good to see you, Travis.
Yeah,
how's everyone doing?
Feeling fantastic on a Sunday.
It's great. Football's on today. Plus a little rugby, too.
And you got some chicken wings for us later on, I believe.
6 pounds. That's how I roll.
Should be enough.
What we're doing for a beer today is we're doing a Kolsch, German Kolsch. Have you ever heard of a Kolsch? Probably not. If you have and you like it, well, good. So do I. Today I just wanted to do something different. I wanted to, this is what I've been doing since the beginning of this summer. I've done about 4 batches now, trying to get it dialed in. And how I decided to do this beer was I wanted it simple, I wanted it light, I wanted a nice session beer. What I mean by that is it's just extract only. No grains, simple, dump the extract in, do your hops, do your finishing hops, put it in the primary fermenter, let it go, and there it is.
And one of the nice things about this style of beer that originated in Cologne, Germany, is that it's really... This is a summer beer. You're out there, you're mowing the lawn, you're sweating, you come back inside, you pour this beer, and it's crisp, it's refreshing, it's light, it's not heavy, it's not like trying to drink a Doppelbock when it's 92 degrees outside.
Right. But are you saying that you wouldn't want this after going skiing all day and coming back in January?
I'm not saying that either. This actually is one of those beers that's actually got a multi-purpose.
Right.
I think of it personally, I think of it in the summertime. That's when I think of this style. That's when I would reach for this style more. But I wouldn't be mad to drink this in the middle of February.
No. How about you? You do your ultra marathons, right? All year round.
And when I get done with those, I like to fill up again and put that weight back on with a nice Kolsch. And
you're actually bulking up for a movie role.
Right, yeah, exactly.
It's where I play a thinner John Belushi. When you get this type of beer, you think, like, what the heck is a Kolsch? The actual, it sounds a lot like it. It's called a Grolsch. It's kind of, remember from the bottles from our first episode, the actual snap top, the ones that pop off.
Spring top.
It comes in that spring top type bottle. It's usually like a green glass.
Green glass.
It's called Grolsch, and that's a good example of what we're making.
So, just pretty much, this episode is going to be about a beer that is simple, a beer that is quick, a beer that is low alcohol, which, perfect, because you can have more than 2, more than 3, more than 6.
And not have to worry.
And just enjoy. Just enjoy.
Don't drive.
One of the other things we're going to explore here, too, about this beer, as you look at it, is the different styles of beer. In addition to the ingredients, the yeast becomes a big factor. And we've got a special Kolsch, German Kolsch ale yeast.
A special string yeast that I'm using to make this. And it's a little bit different than what Travis and Mitch have used. Plus, I'm going to be using some whole hops in this as well. So this is going to be a great episode and just something different that you haven't seen from the last 2. So hope you enjoy it, and let's get going.
And now for this particular beer, we're using a special yeast that Kevin was able to get for this. This is the Y yeast. What's the number on this one?
It's 2565.
2565. This is a Kolsch German ale yeast. And this is actually an activator pack, which in the past we've used, you and I use dry yeast.
Yeah, I've never used this before.
I don't use this stuff either. A lot of brewers use this and have great success. Kevin, actually, you like this stuff.
I do. I very much so.
It's a little bit more expensive than the dry yeast packets, which, come in anywhere around $3 to $4. Yeah. These are about $6.99. And what's nice about this is, as you can see, this one is swollen right now. It's tight. And what happens is you smack it basically to activate this. You take it out of the refrigerator and you just spank it like it.
And right now it is 1:30 right now. I broke this package at 8:30 this morning. So literally, you only need 3 hours for this to take form, and it doesn't need to even actually be fully expanded on this. So pretty much, it's just a little pack in there. Hit it, put it on top of your refrigerator, and let it sit for 2.5 to 3 hours.
And it's liquid yeast too. So what actually happens with liquid yeast is it's a more consistent flavor. Dry yeast has come a long way in the last few years. and you get great results with it. You and I both use it exclusively. But liquid yeast, it's a guaranteed flavor almost every single time. There's a lot less variables.
Well, what you can do is they can narrow it down to the string of yeast that you want for the type of beer that you want. So if you're looking for an Irish Red, which is what Travis first did in one of our episodes, he can get an Irish Red yeast.
There's two different kinds of packs. You can get activator and propagator. This activator, you smack, it's ready to go. The propagator, you smack it, then you dump it into a growler with some wort that you've collected and boiled and sanitized, and you let it grow overnight. So this is very easy. There's a very easy way to get into liquid yeast right here.
I would recommend using this if you had a specific yeast that you wanted to do it. So, there it is. Okay, we're back here getting ready, getting the water up to a boil, or at least get it up to 180 degrees. That's where I like to add the malt extract that I'm adding to this beer. I first got 2 gallons of water in here. All I did to measure that out was a half-gallon milk jug. Pretty simple. If you know your pot and you know where roughly 2 gallons is, I'm not that bright to get there, okay?
Well, and I gotta tell you, not speaking to the fact that you're not bright, but it's speaking to the fact that you know your pot. I know that, like, if your pot doesn't have markers and you're just guessing, what can happen is you can overboil and have too much water. And what happens is your original starting gravities will be lower than what you thought, because you actually have a lot, not in this particular case, but when you're boiling the full 5 gallons, if you don't compensate, if you overcompensate for the evaporation, you can end up with 2. I had an issue a while back where I was using too much water, and I was getting lower gravities to start than I should have been getting.
Right. And with this we're not doing 5-gallon boils, so we're doing 2 gallons, and then we're just watering up to 5 gallons in that primary fermentation bucket. So we're going to wait for this to come up, and then we'll be back and we'll add the malt and we'll go from there. All right, here we are back at, here's the time, the temperature right now is about 180 degrees, and we're going to be adding in the malt extract to this and getting ready for this to bring up to a boil. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we didn't do any grains with this. I planned on not doing any grains because I wanted to make this, and I wanted to make it as simple and as easy as possible, and still be able to have some great beer at home. So all this is just 6 pounds of extract, and what we got is 3 pounds of extra light malt and 3 pounds of wheat malt.
Yep.
So we got 6 pounds here. We're going to start adding this in. You go ahead.
Nice and slow. And you notice Kevin's going to keep stirring. Travis is going to pour it slowly, so it's a nice slow stream. And gets mixed in there. The style of beer we're brewing today is a Kolsch, and that comes from Germany, southern Germany, Cologne, Germany, I believe, correct?
Yeah, it was when I decided to do this, is because obviously it's a very light, it's a light beer, well, you know, and it's crisp. It's a great summertime, springtime beer, actually anytime. Great session beer.
It's a good session beer.
Right, and I really came about it when I was backpacking after college throughout Europe, and I stopped in Cologne, Germany, and I really got a great taste for the Kolsch beer over there. It was fantastic. So as we're mixing this in here, Travis is doing a very good job at going very slow.
That's what I do.
It's one of the main reasons why his wife married him.
There's two. That aside, there's two distinct styles that come out of Germany. We think of German beers. There's those German lagers and whatever. This with a Kolsch, you can do it. It's an ale that likes to be fermented at lager temperatures, but you don't have to do it that way.
You can ferment this beer between 55 and 70 degrees. From what I've been hearing and what I've been tasting, the higher temperatures give off more of a fruity flavor.
Yeah, it's cleaner when it's colder. And you could take a very beer like this, and this is one of those really cool things, and we'll do this in a later episode. Take an ale that you love to make and use lager yeast just to see what happens. It takes a little bit longer, but it's going to be a different flavor. Lagers tend to be a more crisp, clean flavor.
Exactly.
Whereas the ale yeasts tend to be a little bit fruitier in their makeup and a little different.
So this is, like I said, this will when this is done here, will ferment at roughly between my apartment here is roughly between about 68 to 70 degrees. So I'm going to get that more of a fruitier flavor, but I don't have the availability to keep it colder. So, but I will have 5 gallons of my own beer to drink at any time.
And what's happening too is it is October in Vermont, so what's going to happen is slowly over time things are starting to get colder. So there's different areas of your house that you can put beer to change it, to change how it's fermenting, and to give it, a different characteristic. A beer that you're going to brew in summertime, especially Kevin in this situation where he has no way of regulating the temperature except for the ambient temperature in the house. He's, in the summertime, his beers are going to taste different than the way they taste when you make them in the wintertime, when you can put it in the mud room, or the little breezeway on the way into the apartment, and it's going to be, in the high 50s, low 60s. When you ferment at those temperatures, too, what happens is it slows things down. When you're making an ale and it's fermenting at 70 degrees, it's going to ferment a lot quicker. The yeast is going to work. The primary is going to go. You're going to have a quicker primary fermentation, and you're going to get some different flavors. When you're doing it down around 60, which is only 10 degrees, it's going to slow things down, and you might have a 3 to 5 day fermentation at 70 degrees. You might have 7 to 14 day fermentation at 60 degrees, probably more like 14.
Ideally for this beer, if you have a root cellar, that would be perfect for place for this to sit and ferment. And the fermentation, when you at a colder temperature, is going to take a little bit longer too as well.
It is. Well, and that's like Travis, your basement is perfect for fermenting something like this because it stays year round. Oh,
absolutely. All the year round, it's the same temperature all the time. And again, it just emphasizes if you have a small apartment like this, if you're upstairs, you're downstairs, you have a place to put it that's cold, it doesn't matter. You can still make a quality beer, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to, you're going to get a couple different variations. It's kind of fun. I like having the ability to have one temperature, again, small apartment, and being able to do that every single year. So I can just know what I'm doing and be like, boom, this is the temperature, this is how I do this, and go. And Kev has a little more of a challenge because
I keep getting
it's a little more of a challenge just because of the temperature, but for the same thing, he makes quality beer.
And that's one of the things too to talk about, and part of the reason with the show that we like so much. Here we are in Kevin's, you see this is an apartment stove. You can see that we are literally in a very galley style kitchen right now, and we're making beer, and he's making great beer here in Waterbury, Vermont.
Well, thank you. I think it's great. Does what I do. Tastes good with food.
Tastes good with food.
With friends on a Sunday for football. It's even better.
Ooh, some rugby on today too, I believe, as well.
I think there is. So wait. Go ahead. So what we got going on here is the malt is starting to, and water starting to boil. As you can see, it's starting to raft up here. You can see how it's starting to come up. And if you don't, what you want to do is, right when it starts doing this, you want to, before it overflows, you want to take it off the heat for a second, just like this. Because if you don't, you'll have a big sticky mess all over your stove, which is not fun to clean up. And you might have to do this a few times, just like this. And if you're using a turkey deep fryer, then what you want to do is just turn the gas down so your flame goes down on that. So now we got the boil going on right now. Now we're gonna add our hops to this. I have a grain bag that I'm actually putting the hops in because we're using whole hops here that we got. And what kind we're using is Crystal whole hops, which are a Hallertau clone.
These will be spicy. They won't be overbearing. We've got 2 ounces here. You're going to use, what, an ounce and a half?
Yeah, ounce and a half to ounce and 3/4 for the initial boil, and then the finishing hops is going to be about whatever's left.
This style of beer that we're brewing, the Kolsch, by the way, it's not a particularly hoppy beer.
But there's presence of it.
But there is the presence of it. And so with leaf hops here, one of the things about it, as we've talked in other episodes and we've talked about, the hops, is you get the leaf and you get that yellow substance that's inside. Now, when you buy them from the homebrew store, as we have here, they come in these vacuum sealed bags.
Right.
You can see there's, a lot of that floral debris, for lack of a better word. Yeah. I'm not sure what to call. It's that stuff that you really want. You need to make sure we empty this entire thing.
Exactly.
Completely.
And also, what I did is I bought 2 of these last week. And you know what? If you're not going to use them, throw them in the freezer. It's the best way to keep them for longevity. So.
And again, we're going with the leaf type. We had the pellets before.
Yep.
At my house, and
there's also plug hops, which are, so the pellets are little, the plugs are bigger.
Would you take plugs? Would be this type style, just together in plug form, which is probably like a $50 size.
Right.
And when you throw them in, they expand and look just like this. So we're gonna add these here. So here we are, we added the ounce and 3/4 of hops because that was a 2-ounce package of whole hops there. I put them in the bag. What I'm going to do is pretty much just tie this off, just loosely, just like that. And we're just going to put that through and just kind of let that hang out. Maybe... and you just kind of let that go and just hang out. Now we're going to let that sit for 45 minutes. Well, the 45 minutes is up now, and what we're going to be doing here is adding the finishing hops. And what the finishing hops is pretty much just for the aroma that you want to get from your beer. So we have...
The leftover, the hop bill on this was 2 ounces of Crystal hops, and so we put about an ounce in
3/4
in, ounce and a half maybe. I'm not sure. When you get them down here, you could kind of see, especially when you get leaf hops, you can see this is kind of, there's debris and particles that are in here. All this stuff, we really want this.
That's where all that aroma is going to come from.
So stretch that grain bag open there. Yeah. We're gonna just dump these hops.
There we go. All right, so we added the finishing hops. We'll tie this bag up for another 10 minutes, and we'll let that sit.
So the boil's at 50 minutes now.
Correct. So what we're going to do also is we're going to add these Werfelock tablets, and we're going to put these in here. And what this is going to do is make the beer much clearer. So it's going to attach itself to the proteins that are in there, settle it out even more, so you get a nice crystal clear beer.
And if you're leaning over this right now, this
amazing.
aroma is unbelievable. It's those hops just, And
just drop this right in?
Just drop that right in right now.
There we go. Whoa.
Other thing that you can use too is what they call Irish moss, which will allow your beer to have better clarity on it.
Now, does the Irish moss come at this point, or do they use it later on in the process, or it's at the same
you
time?
always use it. The last 10 to 15 minutes of the boil is when you want to use Irish moss or these Werfelock tops.
So we're going to let this hang out now for another 10 minutes, and then we're going to get to the cooling part of it. And in the meantime, we're going to set up the cooling. Kevin, much like all of us, have been very resourceful and creative on how we cool our wort.
Right.
So we're going to show you how Kevin cools the wort right now.
All right, the last of the finishing hops is done. It's about 50 minutes now, 55 minutes. And we're going to take the hops out, let that drain out a little bit. You can squeeze them if you dare.
That is 212 degree water. We just took it out of the...
I'm not going to worry about this right now. So here we go. We're just going to put this and take this. Actually, it's very good to drink this once it's cooled down.
This is,
It's very tasty. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cool this wort down in an ice bath here in the sink. So we're going to take this, and we're going to put this, I put a couple inches of water in the bottom here. I just have some bags of ice that I'm going to put around.
And at this time, it's important to point out, too, that everything that comes in contact with this wort needs to be thoroughly sanitized.
Correct. There
is no more boiling. We're at that stage where you don't want to mess around.
Okay. Could you grab me the spoon that I have sitting in the sink?
Oh, yeah, we do have a
water?
sanitizing spoon here. Shake it, shake it, shake it.
All right. We get that. And all we're going to do here is I'm just going to stir. And this takes about 15 minutes. 15 to 25 minutes. Really more right around 15 to 20 minutes on this. So this should go very good. We're going to do this. And while we're doing this, I'm going to have Mitch and Travis go in, and I have my fermentation bucket in the tub right now. It's full with sanitizing water. And we're going to fill that up to about 3 gallons of regular tap water. And then this should be done. We're going to add this to that. We'll do a gravity reading, and then we'll pitch it with our yeast. And just a note, just to show you, Mitch actually has here, that packet of yeast that I showed you earlier, you want to sanitize the top of it. So you just put it in with some sanitizing solution in the bucket, and you let it sit there along with the scissors too, because you want to use clean scissors when cutting that package as well. Okay, here we go. We chilled the wort down to about 70 degrees, and now we're going to add it to the 3 gallons of water that we put into the primary fermenter here. We'll take this out of the cold water bath that we used to chill this down. And we're just going to pour this in. You can use a strainer to strain this out. I don't have one that would work with this right now, but that's why I had put the hops originally in the grain bag to try to keep everything out as much as possible. Next thing we're going to do before we put the yeast in this is we're going to take a hydrometer reading, a gravity reading on this. I'm going to fill this up. And drop this in here. Give it a spin, get all the air out of it. There we are. Right about .04 for the gravity reading. So that's perfect. That's where we want to be right at. Give it a taste. Tastes exactly how it's supposed to. What we're going to do now is I'm just going to aerate this just a bit, just to get some oxygen in there. And I also, with the wort, that when I was cooling it, I was aerating it there too, so we don't need to do too much here, but just to kind of get it in there. We're going to take this yeast that with the smack pack here, and I have my sanitized scissors. What we're going to do with this pack is you cut the corner off to release the gases that are in there, and then cut a small hole on that end. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to pour this in. Just like that. Perfect. Take our sanitized cover. We're gonna put that right on top. Snap that down, and grab our airlock. And we're gonna put this in just lightly push it in a little bit there. We'll add the water up. There's a little line on here that we can add to. There it is. Cap it off. And I have been seeing the fermentation to start roughly in about 12 hours. So this is gonna, what time is it now? It's roughly 2 o'clock. So we should be looking about 2 o'clock, 2 a.m. Probably won't be seeing that, but there it is. There's your Kolsch. All set, ready to go.
Today here in Kevin's place, in his little brew space, we're going to talk about an important part of the beer making process. We've mentioned it earlier in a couple other episodes that we've had.
Right.
And it's basically racking your beer to secondary fermentation. The term racking in the brew world just means you move it from one thing to another. You rack it from the primary to the secondary, you rack it from the bottle to the bottling bucket to your kegs or whatever. Today, we're going to move it to the secondary, which, as Kevin can explain, this is your secondary.
This is the carboy that we would be using. I think you've seen this before on an episode previous to this. And what we're going to do is, this is going to be the secondary, as we said, and this is the primary. So we're going to move the beer from here into there and let that sit. This has been sitting for about 7 days right now. Pretty much once the fermentation is stopped is when you can move it to the secondary. And then in the secondary, you can leave it for 7 days, 14 days, 10 days, whatever you prefer that you want to get out of your beer.
Months in some cases.
Yeah.
Right.
We're brewing ales here, but if you're lagering a beer, if you're using lager yeast, you're going to primary ferment in something like this. You're going to move it to the secondary, and then what's going to happen is this is the vessel that you're going to let it hang out in for the 3 to 4 months of your lagering temperature. So
here we go. We're going to get started to transfer this beer into the secondary and let that settle out.
And as part of what we're going to see as we do this transfer too, what's going to be left behind here is the trube, which will be in the bottom. It's all the yeast sediment, the husks, and the dead yeast particles, and some alive.
Right.
Anything that was suspended in the beer, the proteins that are left over from the hot break that maybe came from the original boil, any hop residue or any of that stuff. What happens, it's going to be sitting in the bottom. There's going to be a nice little cake that sits on the bottom. So we're going to get the beer off that cake, because leaving it on top of dead yeast can contribute, and other hop resins and things like that can contribute to off flavors in the beer. So this really is something you want to happen within 7 to 14 days.
Correct.
Of brewing.
You don't want it sitting on that cake, like Mitch says.
It's going to get clearer, and it'll have that nice look to it, less sediment. It's always a good idea to try to do secondary fermentation if you can.
Especially on the level when you're talking about extract brewing, because in the process of creating the extract, there's actually a lot more debris and weirdness that shows up. When you're talking about an all-grain brew, the secondary process is less important, although something you still should do.
Cool. So we'll get this. Do we want to get a picture of this here?
That's
still going?
That's not ready to go yet.
That's not done.
That's what I did the other day, remember? And then mine rafted up in my secondary. You already dropped it in there. That's not. You can't put that back on. Let's do it anyways, because you can ferment in here. It doesn't matter. But
All right, so we just got the lid off, and we noticed something that usually it's not as bubbly, and we noticed that it's still working.
it is definitely still working. The Krausen that you see sitting on top of that in the shot now, the foam, that's signs of fermentation still happening. And what you want to see is actually that beer. That stuff should fall back into the beer and fall to the bottom, because ales ferment on the top. Ales are top fermenting. That's where your thing. So it's not the end of the world to be in a situation right now that we're in. We can still transfer this. I transferred one recently that was still in the stage because I needed the primary. And sometimes that's the concern, is that you have one primary, you need to put another beer that you're brewing in there.
Exactly.
So you got to move it.
And it's still, it will still ferment in the secondary here. So it's not a big deal that it's not done here in the primary.
Right. What's going to happen is we're going to slow down the fermentation. This is by transferring it, we're going to slow this down dramatically. The yeast is going to hold on a second. It's going to stop the shock of moving it. We're going to take it off, away from some of the yeast that's there, and the yeast that's still in suspension is then going to go, okay, what's happening now? It's going to freeze up and stop working, and then it's going to sit in the new container for like half a day, and then it's going to go, okay, wait a minute, there's still sugar here. We still have work to do. It's going to wake back up. It's going to start again. And what's going to happen is you'll see this foamy head that we have here, the Krausen, this is going to come back in here, and you'll see this. Luckily, this is a 6.5 gallon, 7 gallon carboy that you have.
So there'll be plenty of room for it to move in there as well.
To raft up. When I did mine about a week or two ago, I didn't think about it. I transferred it into a 5 gallon carboy, and what happened was I rafted up, because I had nowhere for the foam to go. Right. It was up to the top ring here, rafted up and out, and blew the lid off my airlock. And I saw it, and so I had to affix a fermentation, blow off tube into a sanitized growler with water in it. So that's another way you can do it. But you've got plenty of room here, so.
Cool. Yeah, and everything, this is all sanitized. I've already sanitized this. So this is ready to go, and we're ready to transfer.
But that's
all right, we're about ready to transfer. What I have here is just a racking cane and 5/8 tubing.
This little tip on the bottom here, by the way, in case you're wondering what that is, that basically allows it to sit in the yeast tube and not suck the dead proteins and things like that from the bottom. The proteins,
that yeast cake that we were talking about.
It sits in that, keeps it so that it sucks from the top, so you're pulling beer instead of
chunks in the bottom.
So,
and there's stuff in the bottom.
So all we're going to do is we're going to put this in here and then siphon this right into the carboy.
There you go.
Yeah, you can put that in there.
Oh.
Just put it in the top there.
Yeah, we got it. And
so what Kevin's doing is he's sucking on the siphon tube. Now they make auto siphons, and in the joy of homebrewing, Charlie Papazian says, "Do not suck on the tube." But guess what? Relax, don't worry. Suck on the tube. Yeah. It's fine.
It's not a big deal.
Don't spit what you get in your mouth into the carboy. Take the mouth of beer and
drink
move on. I like to swish vodka in my mouth before I do stuff like that.
Right.
And by I like to, I mean I did it one time, then my wife decided I was drinking too much when I was brewing, so we stopped doing it after that. But now basically this just flows into here. One thing we do want to be careful of is we don't want to aerate the beer at this stage. Oxygen is an enemy of beer, especially after it's been fermented. You want to aerate from after you do the boil. If you're doing a full boil, you're boiling all your wort, you want to aerate it on the way into the primary just to get some air back in there, oxygen back in there from what you boiled out. In this case, Kevin's process, you're boiling how many gallons?
Just 2 gallons.
He's boiling 2 gallons and watering up 3. So there's oxygen, there's air, there's O2 that's existing in the water that he's watering up on. So we don't need to add air at any stage, and we don't want to at this point anyways because it's fermenting. So you want to make sure that your hose is pointed against the side of your carboy so it's not splashing and it's not making bubbles.
Correct.
Doing pretty good, but half done.
Some rips.
Well, we just put the water lock on here, the airlock, and we just fill this up with water so any more gases can escape, but nothing else can get into the carboy. So that's it. Now we're ready to go. We'll put this downstairs in a cool, dark area, and I'll let that sit for another, well, whenever I think it's ready to go. Could be 10 days, could be 20.
Nice.
We'll let it go for here.
All right, wrapping things up today. As you've seen, we've brewed Quite a fantastic little beer. Travis is holding up over there. Travis, first of all, let's get your initial flavor notes on what you think about this and how Kevin did. And I'm going to add, too, that we're not comparing it against a Grolsch or against a Kolsch style beer like a Grolsch, because in the United States, it's not actually a very popular style.
It's not. It wasn't. I mean, there was a high time for it, like 1980. Kolsch was a popular beer. But now you can't just go and... That was one of the reasons why I made this, because you can't go to the store and open up a cooler and look at it.
And some of the larger beer stores will stock stuff like this. And if you're really into beer, you should identify those places in your area. You're not walking into a gas station. You're not picking yourself up an emergency 99-cent bag of Doritos and a Kolsch. That's
not going to happen.
It's not happening.
No, not going to happen.
So, Travis, your flavor.
This is... let me get it again one time. It's very smooth. It's very smooth. It's not really hoppy. You got a little bit at the end, a little bit of there's some hops, but it's smooth. It's light. It doesn't, some beers have that big bitter and alcohol feel to it. This is more of you can just sit back, have a few of these, sitting on the front porch on a hot day, and just enjoy a beer. That's a good beer for just hanging out.
What's the alcohol percentage?
The alcohol percentage in this is only 4%. So it's a great. It's not a bold high end alcohol. You're not in your 7s or 8s here. So it's a 4% alcohol. The original gravity on this was 1.04. The final gravity was 1.09.
I'm picking up. It's interesting because you pick up. There's a bit of spicy characteristic that comes from the crystal hops in this one. This is a Hallertau variety. A little bit of spiciness of the hops, but it's so subtle. It's really the wheat. It's actually the wheat malt that you used that I think is the dominating flavor.
Right. It's almost sweet from that. It's almost sweet from that.
The only thing that I would do different maybe is I would drop some of the wheat out of this. And add just more of the light malt, because the color of it isn't where I would like it to be. I want more of a golden hue color. I want more of a golden straw.
Yeah. And again, this is a little more amber.
Yeah, exactly.
Not quite as dark as a red, but it's more of a wheat color.
Ale. I would put that in a pale ale, California Common color variety. So you would be going for a little bit more clear. Maybe you would achieve that with a little bit less wheat.
Right. That's where I would back off on. I'd back off maybe only 1.5 pounds of wheat extract and 4.5 pounds of the extra light.
And what this one really benefits from too is using a Kolsch ale style, your German Kolsch yeast, as opposed to like in a lot of the beers that I'll make, I'll use in my case a Safely USO5. You use the Nottingham. Both of those can be very distinct in their taste. The USO5, it's a very even tasting yeast. It doesn't impart a ton of flavor related to style. You can use it in almost anything, whereas Nottingham, same way, it's got a little bit of that English pale style to it. But with this German Kolsch ale yeast...
It's a Y yeast 2565 is the number on it, if you want to look that up.
It actually imparts that flavor, and that's where you're getting a lot of it. So for him to back off on the malt, or on the wheat malt, to reduce the color, wouldn't impart too much flavor-wise, because you're on a beer like this, you're getting a lot of it from the strain of yeast that you're using.
So this is great. I think it came out.
Great.
Happy with it. Like I said, and maybe if I back off on the wheat too as well, along with the color, clarity will be much better too. It'd be a little bit clearer. You could be able to see through it a little bit.
Now, did you use a Wilfloric tablet on this?
I did. I used a Wilfloric tablet on this, which adds. When you put that in 10 minutes before the end of the boil, it actually should help the beer clear up. And how it helps clear the beer is what makes a beer cloudy is the proteins and stuff that are still in there. The tablet attaches itself, what's in the tablet attaches itself to the proteins and sinks them to the bottom. So when you're doing your primary fermentation and your secondary fermentation, all those proteins that are making your beer cloudy should settle out and give you more of a clear beer.
And that's one of the things why we talked about racking off to a secondary earlier in this episode. You're going to see that too. You can do those things. You don't need to use a Wilfloric tablet.
Right.
But racking to a secondary is going to help you clear up a little bit. Letting it really sit there. When it's in the secondary, let it sit there until you can see that it clears out and you see that sediment layer. The longer you let it sit, the more of those proteins will fall and yeast cells will fall out of solution. But you don't have to do it.
You don't have to do it because, especially if you're making a certain type of beer, say you're making a Witter beer or a wheat beer or a stout or a porter or anything like that, those are beers that aren't going to be clear anyways.
A stout you can't even see through.
Right. So
that's noir.
Yeah. So that's one of the things about, you only use it on a certain beer that you want to be actually absolutely crystal clear.
All right, and this ends this episode of Brew Bandits Television. You can always head online to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Brew Bandits.
Check us out on YouTube at Brew Bandits as well.
Just search Brew Bandits on YouTube. And on the Facebook page, you can find our recipes. We're going to show the recipe for this episode as well. But we also have our other recipes as well. Yep. All three of us are brewing other beers than just the ones you're seeing on these episodes. And we're going to put some of our favorite recipes, ones we've written and ones we've gotten from other people as well. So head online to the Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Brew Bandits and check that out.
And we're not yet on Twitter.
Us.
There you go.
Cheers,
gentlemen.